The Ministerial Code, a set of rules and principles which outline the standards of conduct for government ministers. Now, although there are separate codes for ministers for the UK government and devolved administrations in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, the codes all include the overarching duty of ministers to comply with the law and to abide by the 7 principles of public life, a set of ethical standards which apply to all holders of public office, known as the Nolan Principles. Now, before I continue, let me explain quickly the 7 principles of public life that ministers are to follow, just for a laugh. Selflessness. Holders of public office should act solely in terms of the public interest. Integrity. Holders of public office must avoid placing themselves under any obligation to people or organisations that might try inappropriately to influence them in their work. They should not act or take decisions in order to gain financial or other material benefits for themselves, their family or their friends. They must declare and resolve any interests and relationships. Objectivity. Holders of public office must act and take decisions impartially, fairly and on merit, using the best evidence and without discrimination or bias. Accountability. Holders of public office are accountable to the public for their decisions and actions and must submit themselves to the scrutiny necessary to ensure this. Openness. Holders of public office should act and take decisions in an open and transparent manner. Information should not be withheld from the public unless there are clear and lawful reasons for doing so. Honesty. Holders of public office should be truthful. And leadership. Holders of public office should exhibit these principles in their own behaviour and treat others with respect. They should actively promote and robustly support the principles and challenge poor behaviour whenever it occurs. Now, I'll give you a few seconds to stop laughing before coming back to a serious reality. Well, it appears that Boris Johnson may have changed the Ministerial Code, not to be confused with the 7 principles just explained, ahead of the new Partygate inquiry into a potential attempt to save his arse. The code was changed last Friday and now makes it clear that ministers will not always be expected to resign for breaching the code of conduct. Instead, under new sanctions, they could simply apologise or temporarily lose their pay instead. In other words, accountability. Bojo is also said to have rewritten the code's foreword, removing all references to, get this, honesty, integrity, transparency and accountability. The news about the changes comes as Bojo faces an inquiry into the privileges by the Privileges Committee into whether he misled Parliament over lockdown parties in Downing Street, which could itself be a breach of the Ministerial Code. Labour and the Liberal Democrats accused Johnson of rigging the system to get himself off the hook ahead of the inquiry. I will link to the Ministerial Code in the description for you to look at for yourselves. Downing Street have said that the new version of the Ministerial Code, published on Friday alongside a government statement saying it is disproportionate to expect that any breach, however minor, should lead automatically to resignation or dismissal, has the backing of the Committee on Standards in Public Life and Lord Gate, I don't fucking know, the advisor on ministerial interests. The code stated that ministers who knowingly mislead Parliament are usually expected to resign. However, Downing Street declined to say if Johnson would resign if found to have done so himself. One reason given for changing the rules was to avoid incentives for trivial or vexatious complaints, which may be made but for partisan reasons. Which leads me to believe that those in power don't trust any judicial systems, independent investigations or inquiries into their behaviour. Otherwise, being vexatiously accused of something would generally come out in a thorough investigation, wouldn't it? Chris Bryant, the Labour MP and chair of Parliament's Standards Committee, said the weakening of the system was appalling. The new Ministerial Code is a disgrace. It means that the tiny semblance of accountability disappears. If you break the rules, just rewrite the rule book, is the motto of this despicable government. Bob Neill, a former minister and chair of the Justice Committee, also revealed He submitted a letter of no confidence this week. These events have undermined trust in not just the office of the Prime Minister, but in the political process itself. To rebuild that trust and move on, a change in leadership is required, he said. Neil later told the UK's propagandist station, BBC, that the change to the Ministerial Code was not a wise move. A senior Conservative MP said Boris's value to the party as PM is now exhausted and events will take their natural course. I cannot tell you whether it will crystallise on June the 6th after recess or June 27th, the return of Parliament after 2 by-elections, but the parliamentary party knows it cannot fight and win the next election under Boris. Now, as I've said myself recently, Boris and his cohorts have publicly shamed themselves over and over again. This whole investigation is a political move to further weaken his position, which he has already weakened himself and has been an immense waste of time, money and resources. But the whole idea of changing the rules to suit you is utterly incredible, although not necessarily a shock.